So we're going to walk through the scenario. At some point, one of us will call a judge. We'll rotate, assuming everyone is interested in participating, we'll rotate everyone through. I've got 6 scenarios and there are 5 of you, and we might not get through all of them. So does anyone want to volunteer to take the first one while we're here? And the goal is, you don't have to get it right. The goal is, you'll come in, do the preliminary investigation to give us an idea of the sort of questions we might want to ask, and also when you start discussing, because after each scenario, we're going to let you guys discuss till we can find sort of an answer, and then we'll go over it. The goal is just to give you a starting place to discuss, because some of these might be weird enough that without somewhere to start, everyone might just be like, I don't know. It's a thing. It's probably a problem. I don't know. Does anyone want to go first? Or does anyone have any problems with me calling on someone to go first?
You spin the dice here.
Yeah, all right. John, you're up first.
All right.
All right, so we're playing a game of Magic. It is Lyle's turn.
All right, so you are at 4 and I'm at 2?
That is correct.
All right. Let's get some Tarmogoyf beats in here.
All right. You have 3 cards in the graveyard?
I have 3 cards in the graveyard.
I will not block.
All right, take 5.
You said you have 3 cards in your graveyard.
I do. Tribal enchantment, sorcery, artifact, creature.
Judge?
Hi, how can I help you?
My opponent attacked with his Goyf.
Okay.
I asked him how many cards he had in the graveyard, and he said 3, and then said I took 5 damage. So it was like, clearly, he lied, right? He lied to me about how big his creature was so that he could win the game. Because otherwise, like, I'd block and I don't die.
Okay, so just to clarify, is what you said, how many cards do you have in the graveyard?
Yeah, I asked him how many cards. But, like, I obviously meant 4 Goyf. Like, why else would I ask, right?
I understand that, but that could be confusing and be misconstrued as to your meaning. So he answered your question accurately that you had he had 3 cards in his graveyard. Are we at competitive or?
Yeah, these will all be at competitive.
At competitive, he is not obligated to tell you what types of cards they are unless asked. And you did not ask that question. So in this case, I would say you take 5.
Okay. So from there, I will let you guys discuss. I'll leave the board here and I'll stand up so you can sort of chat about this. So big things we want to talk about is, do we think that's the right answer? That's, step 1, the biggest thing. Are there any penalties we should be giving out if we think something went wrong? And then, because a lot of you are L1s, everyone's an L1?
Yep.
Yeah. Think about, so these will all be at competitive because that's how I designed them, but it's worth to think about, does anything actually change when you move to regular? Because some of them will change when you go to regular, and some of them realistically don't change.
So like this one wouldn't change whether it be regular or competitive.
I think it might change at regular, because at regular everything is open information. So I would say that yes, you should be able to supply that information when that kind of question is asked. At regular, at competitive, this may feel like bad beats, but
I definitely think that is the right answer. He specifically asked a very specific narrow question.
Yeah.
He answered it completely truthfully. Yeah, there's 3 cards.
Yep.
So there's no confusion as to what was here, which means I don't believe there's any communication flaws or errors. I don't believe that there's any penalties that could be assigned because of that, though, because the only thing you'd be looking at is a communication violation, which I don't believe is here.
yeah, I don't think there would be any CPs
No.
here.
Yeah, I don't. I'm with Terrence on this.
Cool. So so there's a question of, like, how does this change at regular? Which partly will depend on the competitiveness of your given store, but realistically, I don't think this should that much change. Players are allowed to ask wrong questions, and even at regular, players are allowed to make mistakes.
Yep.
You're not giving infinite take-backsies when players make mistakes. They ask the wrong question,
They learn
that's a
from it.
bummer. Right, they'll learn, and you learn best when something bad happens, to be fair. What are some different variations, like, what are some different questions I could have asked
What
that
types?
would have got me a better answer?
What card types are in the graveyard?
Sure.
You could have just asked what Goyf's power and toughness were.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would have been like an easy.
Okay, so let's say I ask how big is Goyf? and he says, I have 3 cards in my graveyard.
That is bad. You can't do
That's
that.
Is it bad?
I don't think
That
it's
is misleading.
bad, but I don't think it's fully answering the question.
Let's
Is
pull up our
is
on
he
our phones.
required
Let's
to-
pull up our information areas.
Is
Drive
he
and
fully
all that.
required to answer that question?
At competitive,
I don't believe site competitive he is.
We got a new phone, so we need to download.
new phone.
Player communication. So, what category of information is the power toughness of Tarmogoyf?
Because
This would be
It's
what app are
derived.
you using right now?
Judge Core.
but yeah, you're right. It is.
MTG
you said-
Familiar also has. a
Okay, I
section.
used to have an iPhone, so I know it's different between the two.
So,
Where are we going? I'm sorry.
the information section. It's actually in the MTR, not in the comprehensive rules.
And it's derived information as well.
Yes. So, derived information is information to which all players are entitled access, but opponents are not obliged to assist in determining, and may require some skill or calculation to determine. So, when we go up to information, players are under no obligation to assist their opponent in playing the game. Where's the bit about you can't lie?
Players may not represent derived or free information incorrectly.
Yeah, it's not at the bottom then.
It's underneath the following rules govern player communication.
Yeah. It's right here. Towards the very bottom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. So, players may not represent derived or free information incorrectly. That means you cannot explicitly lie. That does not mean you can't give them a half-true or mostly unrelated answer in lieu of actually answering a question. Assuming we're talking about derived. If it's free information, you have to tell them. Free says without omission or contamination. Or
It's right here.
So this is kind of going to the
They completely
scummy.
answer this.
Yes,
kinda-
this is where that line is, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of player communication is, it's easy to step over the line, but if you're short of the line, we should not be punishing them as if they'd stepped over it.
Yeah.
If I ask how big's a Goyf and he says, I have 3 cards in my graveyard, he doesn't say card types,
Yep.
realistically, I don't think that's the situation where Lyle's done something wrong there. He
So
didn't
they-
answer my question.
What if I change one word though? What if I say I have 3 things? Because cards could be things, but so could types.
That would be,
Ooh,
I
that
think,
would
a
be
communication
problematic.
error.
That's
And
like
that's
now
how
you're
finicky
now
it
you're
is.
stepping a little bit over
right.
the line.
Because I would define that as trying to say that there were 3 types because you said there's 3 things.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's much easier to believe that the word, just changing that to the word things, could be construed as representing.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Something with, mainly because of delirium came in nowadays, and especially if you said 3 things, a lot of newer players in particular used to just delirium.
Yep.
Oh, there's 3 things in there. Okay, that means it's this.
And very importantly here, this is where your investigation is going to come into play.
Yeah.
One of the really good tools there is ask them how they have been doing things. Have I asked, previously in this match, have I asked about the power and toughness of a Tarmogoyf? And if I did we answer it before the same way? Did he say, yeah, but last time I asked him, he said he had 4 things, and he had 4 types in his yard.
Yep.
Well, this time when he said 3 things, there's now a reasonable expectation that that's how we're handling things. Now he's misrepresenting something.
Yeah.
Okay.
The line is very fine there. But
We could keep going down a rabbit hole. And
Yeah,
find
yeah,
more ways to tweak this question.
There's always going to be something.
There's always
weird.
going to
yeah,
be
there's
another way
always
to do
ways.
it.
So what's
Yeah.
my next one? Okay,
Goyf
cool.
has so many bad questions with it.
I'm also curious how you cast that green-white creature with
This one?
no
Yeah,
green or
yeah,
white
yeah.
sources.
All right, so next up, Shane, will have you take the next one?
boy.
I'll just work my way around. All right.
All right.
Yeah, so far.
I'm gonna play Phyrexian Revoker.
Hold on, I might respond.
Okay.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
That resolves.
I think I don't have anything out yet. Let's name the Gyre Reach Sanitarium.
Sure, that's fine. Sure. My turn? Mm-hmm. Sure. Draw. I'll play Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Okay.
Sure. I will 0 to Brainstorm.
Yeah.
Put these 2 back. Judge.
Yep. How can I
Uh,
help?
yeah, so he named my land with this, but I'm pretty sure that says non-land.
Should I read it? actually name a non-land. Alright, it does say name a non-land card. What did you first name with Firex and Revoke?
I mean,
as it
I named the guy who reached Sanitarium because there was nothing else in play that I really was worried about. I did name it.
Alright, so the Gyro Reach is a land, but Revoker said it has to be a non-land card. So therefore, you've named an illegal card
Okay.
for the Revoke.
Okay. So what are we gonna do?
Alright, how far, after this has been cast, how far have we progressed?
I played it. I named the Sanitarium.
My turn.
He took his turn, drew a card, played Jace, brainstormed.
Drew 3, put 2 back.
Yeah.
Crap. So there's a lot going on here. There's quite a bit going on. So Jace should not. Well, okay.
All right, I'll open this up real quick.
Yeah, you can
Sorry.
ask the audience.
Yeah, you can ask the audience. We can now confer. I just want to get a start. So, what is there an infraction here?
Yes.
Yeah.
On how many people?
I would want to ask him a few things, but I believe he's still going to get a failure to maintain.
So, what do you want to ask me?
If you knew that it had to be a non-land permanent.
Yeah, but he saw Jace last game, and I figured he'd name it, so I wanted to at least get a brainstorm out of it first.
I mean, that's all of a sudden where we started getting to be a little bit sketchy on things, because that shows that you intentionally let him do something wrong.
Yeah, I corrected him. I just waited a little bit first.
Which is, I mean, it's not a triggered ability, so that's where this is a problem. It's not like
It is not a triggered ability. It's a replacement effect.
Yes.
So, let's start with Lyle's half, because his half is the easy half. What is he getting?
He gets a.
It would be a GRV.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's a GRV. He did something illegal, right? He named a
Right.
card he wasn't allowed to name. What's the fix for that?
He now has to name a new target.
Correct. Wow.
That's a specific one of the specific fixes in GRV is if a player named something incorrectly or forgot to name something, they name a card now.
Same thing with like Cavern of Souls. If they name a creature type that doesn't actually exist.
Right. Or if you pithing legal a card that's not legal in that format.
Okay.
Named cards have to be legal in that format. So he's getting a GRV. He needs to name a card right now. So he could
anything else
now
happens.
switch his name to
Okay.
Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Okay.
So let's go to the hard part of
Yep.
what am I getting?
Okay, my question to you. Did you know this has to name a non-land card?
Yeah.
I would
So-
probably ask that away from the table.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can
I would,
ask him.
I would definitely.
We'll do it here for the purpose of the
Yeah,
microphone.
and I might be more cagey in the real situation as opposed to just saying like, yes,
Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah, I totally knew that.
Because this isn't so much on the investigation, although that's helpful. Like, I'm going to shortcut some of the investigations to give you the relevant details quickly. We'll say I knew,
Alright.
and I just waited because I wanted to get this down first.
That would answer my next question. I would ask, why did you let him do it?
I assumed that was the card he was going to name otherwise.
I feel like this is close in the cheating area.
Yeah.
All right. Does anyone think this is cheating?
Yeah, because you
You obviously know that you weren't supposed to do that, and you let him do it anyways.
Yeah.
So this is cheating.
So the short and sweet definition of cheating is either you did something illegal or let something illegal happen because it benefited you and you knew it was illegal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you have to
If,
know that you're.
if without cheating you were looking at giving me a failure,
Yeah.
that means with intent it's now cheating.
Yes.
Because broke a rule or allowed a rule to be broken. So like on this end, it's pretty easy to see I was cheating because like I waited and called attention to it. The more interesting one is if instead Lyle calls attention to it later. You know, let's say his next turn he's like, oh, I can't name a land with this. It's important when those kind of mistakes happen that you check with the opponent because they might have known and just
Never gonna say anything.
right. It could be the guilty like I was, or it could be the innocent of just like I thought it was a trigger and he was allowed to mess up with it.
Or
Like
it could
I
be
didn't
Lyle
know.
intentionally trying to name something else later on, like, oh,
So that he
that's
could
the-
switch
Save
it.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
He could stop me from using this for now and then switch it later. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Next up. What's next on my list? This one. Okay.
This one.
No, this one.
Oh wait, I don't play that yet.
Yeah, I play first. So you'll take the next one. We'll just work our way around. Okay. Let's see what I want to leave open here. Sure. I'm gonna cast Champion of Wits, not of the Wits. I just play trigger.
Yeah. Trigger on the stack. -2.
Sure. So this dies. You gain 2 life. So I still draw 2, discard 2.
Draw 0, discard 2.
Oh. Judge.
Yes. Hello. What's going on here?
Okay. I cast my Champion of Wits.
Yes.
My opponent moment of craving it with the thing on the stack.
Yeah.
And I asked if I wanted to know, like, I still draw 2, discard 2. My opponent says I should be drawing 0 and discarding 2.
Okay. So this is one of those fun ones. Oh, I believe I know the answer here.
You might have lotteried into one of the hard ones.
So I've actually taken a question with Champion of Wits just recently, but if I remember it, due to state-based actions, I think you're still going to draw the 2. The reason being is it's going to see its last known power and toughness. Well, its last known power, so it's going to give you the 2.
All right, I will give you the answer to the ruling part, which is that the last time it was in play, it had 0 power.
Yep.
It was a 0, -1. So its last known information is as a 0, -1.
Yeah. Remember, dying triggers just look back in time at what happened right the second before
Immediately
they died.
before it died. Right.
Okay. Actually, when did he cast this?
With the trigger on the stack.
With the trigger on the stack. See, this has a May, so he doesn't have to draw the cards. And since he's not going to, if he doesn't choose to draw the cards, he's not actually going to have to discard the cards.
I know.
Cool. So let's open this up to the group. So, first of all, let's handle what he said to me. I asked, do I still draw 2, discard 2? He said, no, you draw 0, discard 2. Is there anything wrong with what he said to me?
He's trying to force you to make a decision and trying to make it so that way you don't actually see this May ability,
That's true. That's definitely what he's trying to do.
Yes, he's trying to force you past that, which I believe is
there
a problem.
anything wrong with that?
I have something
Yeah.
first. Did you? So you said after it had died, you had. Yeah. So it's dead.
It's dead.
Then you reminded your opponent that you wanted to draw 2, discard 2.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you want to resolve that ability.
I'm asking how I resolve that ability.
Okay.
So you're asking,
Yeah,
if
because
I
I was
would
asking,
do this.
I still draw 2, discard 2, right? And he said, no, you'll draw 0, discard 2.
So at that point, it's actually, depending on right where you were at the time, you could still make the decision to say, no, well, I haven't actually made my decision fully. I was trying to make certain that this is how this would resolve.
That's kind of what I wanted to ask.
If I was aware of the May trigger, sure. So,
But are you saying that you were not?
I was not aware.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I'm wondering if he knew that
Yes.
it was a May trigger as well, because if he
In the
didn't-
scenario, he absolutely knew.
Okay.
He 100% knew it was a May, was trying to get me to discard 2 cards for free. Is there anything wrong with him doing that?
I believe so. I just don't know if it falls in where. Like if it
I don't
falls in
think so.
communication.
I'm saying
Almost,
no
it's-
at competitive.
And so we're at competitive. So hands up if you think Lyle's done something wrong here.
I don't think so.
Okay. I will give you. Lyle has not done anything wrong.
Okay.
He can't tell me this is a must, but he can, because it is a legal option for me to draw 0, discard
Okay.
2, he
can
can
see that.
suggest that option, and I can then do that option.
So that the line is, if we're like if he's a new player and he's like, oh, how does this work now? I don't understand. I'm like, oh, well, you have to draw 0 cards and then discard 2 cards.
Right.
Yeah.
If he
That's
says you
not
have
okay.
to,
Okay.
but I asked,
Yeah.
so I draw 2, discard 2 still? He said no,
Okay.
draw 0, discard 2.
Okay.
So, as a follow-up question, and I was sort of hoping this would happen, were there any other infractions that happened during the course of that judge call from anyone?
I don't think there was any infraction, sir.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did this resolve?
Yeah, it resolved.
Okay, never mind. That's fine.
So, there was one more infraction,
didn't actually-
but unfortunately it was committed by a judge. And because of that, we can't give them a penalty. You pointed out that this is a May trigger.
Yeah.
I was pointing out more in general for everybody, but
Yeah. This has actually come up a lot in Standard. I've answered this multiple times in events. This is a very careful one to walk through. So, like, we're talking about borderline things as well, right? One of the problems with borderline things is a lot of them is one player knows better. Lyle has a much better understanding of the rules than me. He's using that knowledge to try and gain an advantage, which you're totally allowed to do in Magic. What we want to be really careful to not do as judges is come in with our superior rules knowledge and give that to a player so that they don't lose advantage to the player who knew more. If you walk over and say, well, yeah, if you choose to use the ability, but it's a May, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Well, I probably didn't know that if I was asking the question at that point.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance I was going to mess up and discard 2 cards, and you've just let me not do that.
Yeah.
Would the proper thing to be just to read the text on the card then to the player, and then
I would answer this question as, all right. Well, the way graveyard or enters graveyard triggers work is that you're going to look back in time at what his power and toughness were the second before you put him in the graveyard. So when we look back in time, we're going to see that he has a power of 0. So you would draw 0 cards and then would still have to discard those 2 cards.
I wouldn't say that last bit,
Okay.
but I would say all the rest of that. What I said when I answered it was, Champion of Wits, when that ability resolves, it will use the last known info for the creature. So last time it was in play, it had 0 power. At which point the player was like, okay, so I draw 0, discard 2. And I was like, sure, you can do that.
Yeah.
They discarded their 2 cards, and we moved
the
on.
key phrase in there is you can do that.
And realistically saying you can do that instead of just
Gonna-
yes
this should
might
take
have been a
up on the
little
brakes
too
anyway,
leading
yeah.
to.
This is one of those things like you're finding the exact way to say this where no one messes up either positively or negatively.
Yeah.
is going to be very difficult.
Because if you lead it a little bit too much to the you discard 2, that player is going to come back later on and go, well, the judge told me I had to discard 2.
As a judge, I would only recommend that you try to explain the rule that answers the question they're asking, not try to explain how the interaction would work on all levels.
Yeah.
You just want to answer the question that you're being presented with.
Yeah, that is a very difficult hurdle to try and overcome.
We've
sure.
all provided outside assistance as judges
Yes.
before.
Yeah.
If you judge long enough, you do it at some
Oh
point.
yeah, the most recent scenario I had with this was at a Star City. I was giving this ruling. Another judge was watching me behind the other player. I said it'll use its last known power, which is 0. The player's like, okay, so I'll draw 0, discard 2, and the judge behind the other player was like, well, yeah, but you don't have to. It's a May. Uh-oh. At which point, the opponent got upset, but didn't really protest more because they realized the gig had been up.
Yeah.
And the player was like, oh, okay, I won't use that ability. And I am standing there like, let's chat. Yeah. So it's very easy to accidentally have this happen. If you judge long enough, it'll happen to you. It's just something to keep in mind as you take these calls, especially these ones. All right. Next scenario, you are
Tyler?
Tyler, okay. Tyler and
Donovan.
Donovan, sweet. All right, Tyler, you're up next.
Still here.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter where these cards are. Yeah, have at it.
Let's go.
Sure. I'm at 2.
All right, go.
Draw. I'm gonna cast Serum Visions.
Yep.
I'm gonna draw, and then I'm gonna scry 2. This actually needs to be on top for this scenario.
I know what this scenario
It's
is.
fine.
So.
Yeah. Judge.
Yes. How can I help you, players?
Sure. On my opponent's last turn, he teched with the Goblin Guide, but I think he forgot his trigger.
Okay.
Or rather, I know he forgot his trigger.
There you go.
So, Goblin Guide, what is it? Let me just read. Defending player reveals the top card of his or her library. If it is a land card, that player puts the card into his or her hand. With this, it is a missed trigger that you may put on the stack.
Okay.
Now, for missed triggers such as this, you can do this within at least a turn cycle.
Yep.
So, would you like to put?
I would love to put this on the
Wait,
stack.
wait, wait. He just put like a bunch of cards on the top of his deck after he looked at them. How is that okay?
Unfortunately, with this, since it is your trigger, it is your responsibility to put the trigger on the stack. and since we forgot to do this,
But if he knew I missed it, why does he get to wait until now to say something?
like I said previously, since it is a missed trigger, it can be put on the stack within 1 turn cycle.
So, first thing, are there any penalties for anyone?
Yeah. That. So with
bullshit's
with,
probably
with,
done.
Besides the language.
So, isn't that some sort of like new thing with Path to Exile? If you're giving your opponent some sort of advantage from your own card, it is your responsibility to remind your opponent.
That's a communication. This has
That's for spells, though, not for triggers.
This is
Oh,
a
is that-
this
is
is
that
a
a
detrimental
different
trigger.
thing? Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
means
Yeah.
that he's going to be getting a mistrigger warning.
Right. Right. Yeah.
He's and that's
This
because
is
it
bad
is
for
detrimental.
him. He's not allowed to forget
It is very
But
bad.
it's different from spells.
Path to
and then
Exile
abilities.
is a different situation.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So, he's getting a warning for mistrigger.
Yes.
Am I getting anything? Did I do anything
No,
wrong?
you
didn't do
actually
anything
didn't do
wrong.
anything
Do
wrong.
anything wrong there.
Congratulations, you know the rules.
I love this scenario. So, to be fair, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and everyone has the instinctual feeling that it's a little weird and scummy, and maybe there should exist something somewhere in policy that makes this not so easily abusable. But as of right now, this is perfectly legal. I am not required to point out his triggers. And like you said, as long as we catch it within a turn cycle, I get the option of putting it on the stack.
Yeah, it's not like he can be like, well, the last 3 turns he didn't do this. I want to do this 3 times
Yes.
now.
Other
Scott.
things to consider, especially with the Goblin Guide, I would want to know what round we are in, and I'd want to talk to the Goblin Guide player about, like, hey, how many times have you attacked with this card, and you miss it every time?
Right.
You don't want to give the opponent a card
Yeah.
sometimes. That's
Yeah.
another avenue you may want to, like, if you feel like it was just an honest one-time mistake.
Yeah.
But good information.
Yeah, that's another important thing with your investigations and these sort of things is it's easy to focus on the side where it looks like something's up, right? It looks like something's up on my side. But, like, he did forget a detrimental trigger.
Yeah.
He might be cheating, and it's just I
like how
finally
many
noticed
times-
and I took advantage of it, but
This is not directly related, but tangentially related,
Yeah.
I think. Michael Aerosmith has a great conference that he does, or great presentation he does about investigations. And there's one where, in the investigation, you basically have to stop a fight between a judge and a player.
Yeah.
Because the guy's like super angry his opponent's cheating, and then he gets aggressive with the judge who doesn't believe him. And then the other judge has to come in and stop it. Well, you're so focused on this fight between the judge and a player, you might forget to actually investigate. Is this other guy actually cheating, and that's why this guy's upset?
Could we go to the arbor, what is it, the land that's also a creature?
Yep.
Dryad Arbor.
Yeah, Dryad Arbor. Like, no, that was definitely with his lands. It's not a creature what I attacked. I didn't see it there.
Good old Dryad Arbor,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Making everyone mad for forever.
Yeah,
right.
everyone's mad forever.
next up one, side note for you, I'm not cheating.
Okay.
But this card is going to go on top after a shuffle happens because it's necessary for the scenario. That is outside setup shenanigans. That's not involved in watching this call.
Are we doing?
Judge,
are we-
insufficient.
We're gonna
shuffling.
we're
I'm
gonna skip
need-
to the
doing this one?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
insufficient shuffling. I'm gonna need you to shuffle your library.
We'll do that in your
All right. So
phase, I guess.
yeah. So I'm just gonna surgical extract your Grizzlebrand over here.
Sure. I have a Vendilion Clique in my hand.
Yeah. I don't know how you're gonna cast these Grizzlebrands with all these planes in your deck. All right.
All done for that?
Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead.
Draw. Okay. I'll cast Exhume. I'll put my Grizzlebrand to play.
I just surgical your Grizzlebrand.
Judge.
Yeah. How can I help you guys?
He targeted my Grizzlebrand with Surgical, and then he got the ones out of my deck, but didn't get the one in my graveyard.
What turn? Where are we at in the game right now?
We're
whose
on my
it is?
turn.
And you surgical it on your turn.
On his on his main phase, and then we went to my turn. I drew this Exhume, and then I cast it.
Sweet. So that's where we're at right now.
Yep.
Okay.
And I would like to put this into play.
Cool.
I'm sure you would like to put that
I'm
into
sure
play.
you would. Okay.
Card text on surgical says up to.
Yeah, that's why I was gonna have some of them on
Okay,
screen. Is
so-
because Surgical's text.
So,
It is choose
You
target
did.
card in the graveyard other than a basic land. Search its owner's hand, library, and graveyard for any number of cards with the same name as that card and exile them, then shuffle.
So, the way that Surgical reads is that you choose any number of cards with that name, and I'm assuming that these are the ones that you have chosen to exile. You did not choose to exile this one, so that
How
when
can
remains in
the
graveyard.
target of the spell not be affected by the spell?
Because all you're doing is choosing the card in the graveyard. Then you are saying to remove any number of them with that same name, including itself. So since you didn't formally exile the card itself, it's still in his graveyard. That's,
I love
that's
Jeff really
So
has to push it in his face like, yeah, I got this.
So that's our ruling.
Yeah.
So now let's open up the floor to. Has anyone? Did I do something wrong in not exiling the card he pointed at with the surgical?
You did nothing wrong.
I don't think
It's up to
so.
him
No.
to actually remove it. Moto got me on this. Like,
Or
3
at
4
least
times.
after, like, during the shuffle or something like that, like doing your shuffle of the library, he could be like, no, the ones in your
Yeah,
graveyard
if
still
he
gone.
if he tells
Something
you
is happening,
to
like,
take
right
it,
at the
like
time.
get the
Yeah.
one out of your one out of your graveyard, and I'm gonna look through your deck.
Are there any other questions we want to ask the two of us about handling this sort of
You
thing?
want to ask Lyle about how he's been casting Surgical Extraction beforehand. If that card that he was targeting was also exiled along with the other group.
If every time he's surgicaled me, I've grabbed the one out of the graveyard every time the
Yeah.
target, that creates a pattern of expectation that, yes, we're exiling the
gonna
one
do
you
it.
targeted. He would have made it clear that he wasn't. So, like, the reason I don't use extirpate is it says all and it's a public zone, so you have to find them. But an important thing to remember here, it's really easy for Lyle to say, I clearly wanted that one. What if Lyle's playing Reanimate in his deck? Yeah, he wants to remove it now that I drew a reanimation spell, but otherwise on his next turn, he's going to get the one in my graveyard that he left. Like, it's worth remembering that sometimes what looks like, oh yeah, obviously they meant that, maybe they didn't, and they're covering their butt now that it punished them. You know?
Okay. Interesting.
That is definitely something that gets mucky when you try ruling, like, the player intended to do this thing. Is, well, they say that now, but what did their actions actually show?
You can't actually tell what their intent was by doing it.
Right. You can tell what they actually did, and what he actually did is, all I did was point at it and say, yeah, exile that. These are the ones he physically took an action on.
So, can Lyle intentionally leave this in the yard?
He can. With surgical.
surgical.
Not with extra.
With surgical.
Yes. With surgical, and actually with any, let's say there's like slaughter games and stuff, right? Let's say he slaughter games with me, and when he's looking through my deck, he just misses one. He's allowed to just miss one. If I draw that card the next turn, that's on him. Because, again, what if he's got... I mean, bribery's not... Is bribery legal in Modern?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, what if he's got bribery and he wanted to leave one copy for that, but didn't want me to draw my other ones because I'm playing through the breach or whatever?
No, my question is, so he surgicals, and then say we go to the end step, and he sees that the Grizzle brand is still in there. Would we fix that scenario then? Would we go back and fix that at a competitive level?
Our window on that is going to be a lot dependent on your investigation there.
Okay.
So, like, he cast it in his main phase. If we're in his end step, maybe in his end step I cast a Brainstorm or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, that Grizzlebrand should be exiled as well.
Yeah.
Probably gonna exile it there. I might do a simple backup real quick to undo my Brainstorm, because, like...
Because that could change what
Yeah,
you do.
back up
Right.
through brainstorms. Great idea.
But...
Well, we're saying
If
the
he-
brainstorm's not cast all the way yet.
Yeah, if he clearly intended this and he makes it known before decisions can really be made based on that still being there,
Okay.
and it's not too far in the future, which is, again, sort of subjective, use your judgment, but as soon as I've started to make decisions and things have changed based on that and we've given new information, it's too late.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, and
Yeah, the last one?
yeah, last one. So, any volunteers for the last one? Everyone's gone through once.
Scott.
John will take it. All right. We can go to your turn. I have effects in your draw step.
Okay.
I'm gonna cast Vendilion Clique.
Yeah, resolves.
Holy moly.
He didn't target his opponent.
Because I know me and you don't agree on this.
Target.
Was this already supposed to be here or no?
I'll
is
target
back to
myself
you.
with Clique. I'll reveal this. I'll reveal.
Whoa.
I'll reveal this exhume.
Oh,
draw a
Judge.
Hi, how can I help you?
He cast Vendilion Clique.
Okay.
I told him it resolved. I showed my hand. He writes down every single card in my hand and then says he wants to target himself instead.
You can give your ruling. It's fine. It's worth discussing.
So, side note, I know that me and you don't actually agree.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
this
no.
at all.
I would give the ruling you would give if you were a head judge. That's totally fine.
So when so I'm gonna ask you first. Have you cast Vendilion Clique before this game? This game or in previous games?
No. This is game 1. It's my first copy.
This is your first copy. Okay. When he cast the Vendilion Clique and it entered, did he choose a target or did you just lay down your hand?
I mean, I laid down my hand. I mean, why else would he cast Vendilion Clique if he didn't want to? I got a
draw
7-card
step.
hand. Why else would he want to cast it in my draw step if he wanted to draw a card?
So with the Vendilion Clique, you can choose either your opponent or yourself, and with you just putting down your hand before he got the chance to choose the target, and he wrote everything down, that's perfectly okay for him to do. He wasn't given ample time to choose the target.
I saw on the Pro Tour a dude cast Vendilion Clique, and the other guy was starting to put his hand down to show him. He's like, no, I'm not targeting you.
Yeah.
How does he not get to say that to me now?
Ooh,
You're fine. So
you might actually.
let's.
You got me there. That's a good one. You got me there.
We will now open the floor to everybody.
Yeah.
That's why I moved this one to the end, because this one's fun. And this one has a lot of discussion around it, and there's some amount of contention. There's a really old Riki Hayashi article that is a fine article in its own right, and I would not read because it's a million years old, and things have changed and evolved as this sort of shenanigan has become more prevalent. I was thinking about cutting this one, but it actually happened a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago on camera, because someone on Channel Firefall wrote an article, or TCG Player wrote an article about it. So, he clearly said that this resolves, right? Which means my trigger is on the stack.
Yep.
It has to go on the stack right away. And
Unless you take a game action. I missed it.
sure, unless I took a game action, yes. I could miss my trigger.
Nerd.
So this is in play. My trigger is on the stack. This trigger has a target, which means we have to pick that target as soon as it goes on the stack.
Yes.
Right? This can't be on the stack with no target chosen.
Basically. Yep.
So, for the interpretation that does not let me get away with this, our line in free information, if anyone still has the communication section open, under free information, it says details of current game actions and past game actions that still affect the game state. And that players are entitled to that information without contamination or omission. Contamination being perhaps misrepresentation or a misunderstanding. The target of spells and abilities, what are you targeting with that, is free information. You're not allowed to figure it out.
Yeah.
That is information that you're entitled to without omission. When he flops his hand with that trigger on the stack with no target yet declared, it is clear that he is doing that because he thinks he's been targeted. That is a misunderstanding that I have an obligation to correct per the communication policy. If I do not correct that quickly, and you can pretty clearly argue that if I take the time to write down a 7-card hand, I have not quickly corrected that.
No.
That is grounds for a communication policy violation. You will not... I don't think you'll catch flack from someone for issuing a CPV in a case where this is clearly resolved. The finicky bit is if it hasn't resolved, because then you're allowed to reveal your hand whenever you want, right? I can be like, hey, do you want to scoop?
Yeah.
But there is in the past, Ricky's article actually outlines, like, so long as no spell was cast above this, so, like, somehow responding to the trigger, then it makes a difference. But recent rulings I've seen in forum posts and the like of that are more in line with, if it resolves, you need to clear it up. And if it hasn't been clear that it's resolved, you don't need to clear it up.
So like the fine line for this would be you writing the cards.
Well, the first line is the word resolved.
Yeah, the first line is whether or not this is on the stack or in play. And then the next line is, if I correct the miscommunication, as soon as I'm aware of it. Which means he flops his hand, yes, I'm going to see the cards.
Yep.
I need to, if he flops, and I've seen on camera, the guy flops and the guy's like, no, wait.
Yeah.
Totally fine, you're not going to get in trouble.
Yep.
He flops, you take a good look. I'll target myself. Too long.
That's too much, yeah.
You've allowed the miscommunication to persist. That's bad.
The line with the first line with the resolves, the difference between that scenario and one where we haven't said the word resolves is if he casts Vendilion Clique and I just show him everything, and he's like, okay, remand my Vendilion Clique. There's a big difference there. Because now he's getting to see everything, and he's getting to draw a card and keep his Vendilion Clique.
Okay.
There's a big difference between being able to do that and we're in the port where he has to target somebody.
Yeah.
That would definitely change my answer.
There's this one has some very, very fine lines around player communication, which is an area that I feel like there's, like the running joke of it's never CPV.
It never used to be. It's a lot more nowadays.
There's a lot more CPVs now, and a lot of it is that there's better awareness now of what sort of things actually qualify as that. We in the first one we talked about how the Goyf thing could potentially be a CPV, right? Whereas, like, I'm sure plenty of times players have answered that just a toe over the line and not really gotten the penalty for it.
When I was learning to get ready for being an L2, one of the pieces of advice I got about trying to think about how to deal with the game is the fact that Magic is supposed to be about cards, not about words. And we don't want to encourage a culture in Magic where you are winning based on what you said or how you said it versus what's actually happening on the table. Unfortunately, the rules did not used to really allow you to enforce that a few years ago as much as they do nowadays. So now there's a lot more in written or in writing to help you make sure that words are not why games are being decided.
Yeah.
Right?
When
the whole CPC thing with Path to Exile.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because when John and I were down in Cincinnati, there was a big one that happened where a player had Emrakul out on the board. Andy was telling us about this. Mm-hmm. Literally shows his hand to his opponent. This was game 3, and goes, I got it. And the opponent goes, okay, ID then? And the player shook on after him saying ID. And they scooped up all their cards, wrote on the sheet. He wrote ID on it, and they had to get the head judge down
to fix it.
And there was a big discrepancy between the two head judges on should it have been the opponent or the player with the Emrakul winning the match or it being an ID. And I guess since they could kind of reconstruct actually what the board state was, it was ruled that the player with the Emrakul won, but the other head judge also thought that it was an ID because of communication issues.
Generally, if you think a player is trying to scum the other player out on finicky fringe wording, you should. There's not always going to be a clear answer, obviously, because we had the Clique where it was one way, Goyf where it was another. But those are the ones where you really want to investigate and make sure you're very clear on exactly where the information category is. If we're in free or we're in derived, because that's going to change a lot of things. And mixing those up basically changes the answer in a lot of the cases. Because of that, no contamination or omission.
Yeah.
If Goyf was somehow free information, so regular REL, I asked my Goyf, how big's the Goyf? It gets muckier now because derived is free, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I still ask the direct question of cards in graveyard, I'm like, I asked a dumb question, but basically anything other than that very specific one could change it.
Any questions, guys? All right, well, let's get set up for our next one.
Sweet.